Dr. Hans Diehl is one of America's 20 superheroes of health. He's a best-selling author, researcher, speaker and clinical professor of preventative medicine at Loma Linda University in California. He's at the forefront of the emerging field of lifestyle medicine. The clinical results of his research have been published in over 20 medical journals. Through his world-class CHIP program, he advocates a simpler, saner diet that prevents, arrests and reverses many common diseases, including heart disease. His best-selling book, Health Power, has 2 million copies in circulation and has been translated into 21 languages. Dr. Hans Diehl, I'm delighted that you're with us again. Now, our topic today is a fascinating one. The killer comes to dinner. What's that all about?
It's actually pretty serious.
Oh?
He is fed 3 times a day. He doesn't pay for his meals. He's a freeloader. He loves cholesterol, fats, and grease. That's his favorite foods. And he gets bigger and bigger, and he grows more and more, and he grows and takes up more and more room within our arteries. The killer, he strikes without any warning, and in 1 out of 3 cases, the first sign that he's there is also the last sign.
Oh, this is serious.
Sudden death, atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, and somehow the killer is directly associated with what we put into our systems, food.
So what we put on our tables, the killer comes to dinner.
Yeah, we feed him, and he takes up residence inside of our arteries. And then, without any warning, he's not very grateful. He just strikes. And the first sign, for most people, sudden death. Let me show you what that killer really looks like. Let's take a look.
I first woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, "Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What did you have?" He said, "I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake." And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
It is really amazing, isn't it? If you're an Australian, if you're an American at 20 years of age, you have 20% narrowing already of these coronary arteries.
So young.
By the time you're 50, you probably have 50, 60% narrowing already, and you have no symptoms. The killer is enjoying his presence within your arteries. You're feeding him every day. By the time you're 70 years of age, you might have 70, 80, 90% narrowing and you still don't have any clue what's going on. The first sign, if you're lucky, is angina pectoris. That's sort of a chest pain. It's like an elephant is sitting on your chest. It comes and then you relax and it goes. That means the artery is not blocked, but it's narrowed. But when it's blocked, when you have a blood clot, you know, that's when no blood is reaching the heart anymore, and the heart begins to, the muscle begins to die. Now it's really heart disease, right? And you know, the interesting part is that this disease, atherosclerosis, is not just affecting the coronary arteries, but the arteries in the brain, to the ear, to the eyes, the carotids here. It's affecting the kidney arteries. It affects the penile arteries responsible for impotence to a large extent. It has to do with the femoral arteries to the leg, and then you have claudication or you have gangrene. So this is really a very systemic disease process. It's really one disease called atherosclerosis, even though we give it different names based on the location,
but
right?
It affects the whole body.
Yeah, and so therefore, if we take care of coronary artery disease, we actually take care of the whole circulatory system, right? So that's a very important concept to get across, I think.
So this is a very insidious disease. It works by stealth. With that being the case, how can I know if I've got it?
No, you're worried, right?
Yes. How can I tell?
You know, we didn't have a clue. And so the government became very interested and said, why is this? What is the nature of this disease? And they began to launch a major study called the Framingham study. It's a town of about 50,000 people. They enrolled in 1949 some 5,200 people who apparently had no obvious disease processes. And they said, we want to follow these people. Every 2 years they had examinations, and they watched these people year after year after year, and they recorded the diseases, they recorded the hospitalizations, they recorded the deaths. This was all done before computers. So this is a monumental study. The study is still, even today, going on. It's now a 3-generation study. It's the gold standard. It's the ultimate study that helped us to understand what heart disease was. You asked the question, how can I tell? You really can't tell, because it's asymptomatic. It has no symptoms until it's almost too late, isn't it?
So who is at risk from this hardening of the arteries, this cardiovascular disease? I mean, it affects 100,000 Australians with heart attacks, with strokes each year. It kills over 50,000 Australians. It costs our economy $8 billion. Who's at risk? Who does it affect?
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting. This disease is not really a respecter of persons, their gender, or their color, or their origin. It strikes anywhere. But in general, it has to do with our understanding of the disease and what we're willing to do for it. Now, coming back to Framingham, you know, that's
Our little town outside of Boston.
That's right. So they started that program, and within 6 to 10 years, they began to recognize that the people that had high cholesterol levels, when compared to those that had low cholesterol levels in the study, they had 3, 4, 5 times more often a heart attack. And says, maybe cholesterol is one of these factors that place you at risk. Then they found out that those who were smokers had much more heart disease than those who didn't. Now, in those days, we always thought smoking caused lung cancer. But this is the first time now, it's related to heart disease as well. And then they looked at blood pressure problems, they looked at diabetes, and they looked at overweight, and they looked at inactive lifestyles, and they began to realize that these were the risk factors, the drivers of this disease. I've put these risk factors into an arch for education purposes. Just take a look here. The more risk factors, the greater the risk. It's not 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 or 2 + 2 + 2. No, it's 3 times 3. So it's a multiplication here. So the more risk factors, the higher the risk. So these risk factors then drive this disease process. But there is something aside from these mathematical predictions, the estimates that we can make for whole populations based on these risk factors. And that is that when you look at the next risk arch, as you see here, you notice I have given them a special color. That is the cholesterol, the high blood pressure, the triglycerides, and then you see the diabetes and the obesity. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 risk factors are very unique because they have something in common.
And what are they?
What do you think they have in common? They have something in common, and that is these risk factors, cholesterol, high blood pressure, triglycerides, diabetes and obesity, they relate to largely what we put between our lips.
What we eat.
The diet-related risk factors. So just think, the majority of risk factors that drive this disease called atherosclerosis and all the other diseases that come with it, they are largely determined by what we put between our lips. Our diet becomes very, very important.
How do we go about getting our cholesterol down?
Well, you know, medication is sort of the second line of defense, the way we look at it. If we cannot get the cholesterol to come down with dietary means, then we always are very happy to take a look at medications. That's what we think is the second best option, because when you use diet, you have no side effects and you can reduce your food bill and so on and so forth. So, but how do you do it dietarily? There are three things.
Well, that's what we all want to know.
Three simple
What are
things.
these three simple things?
Okay, number one, don't eat cholesterol. Where do you find the cholesterol? Only in animal products. Liver is the highest, then egg yolk, then comes shrimp, and then beef, pork, and chicken is the same amount of cholesterol.
So what are you saying? Are you saying that chicken has the same amount of cholesterol as red meat?
You seem to be surprised.
Yes.
You know, everybody's surprised. When I say that, people say, no, that cannot be possible. Because they remember that chicken probably has some advantages, and it does.
We usually recommend white meat.
That's right. And it is lower in fat content, which is important. Although the way chickens are raised nowadays, a lot of things are changing. They're already prepared when they come to you. Whether it's white meat or red meat, and whether it's pork or not, you know, the amount of cholesterol is about the same. So you want to reduce cholesterol, which means you better cut back on all animal products, okay? And of course, it also includes eggs and liver and so on. But number two, really cut back on saturated fats and trans fats. Yeah, the trans fats are the fats that you find in cakes and pies. These are hydrogenated oils that don't turn rancid, and that's why they are liked by the industry. Okay, so that's trans fats, and that's what you usually find on the nutrition label listed, because even as little as 2 grams is really pushing the liver into overdrive to making cholesterol. So it's trans fats. Then you have the saturated fat. These are the fats that you find in animal products by and large, and maybe some in some coconut. And the third one is use more soluble fiber, because it kind of ushers the cholesterol out. And that's what you find in beans and in oats, this kind of oat bran. This is what helps you there. On the average, in cholesterol levels of people who attended the Pritikin Longevity Center, and this is within less than 4 weeks, you can drop your cholesterol levels by 25%. The higher the cholesterol initially, the bigger the drop. We find the same thing in our CHIP program, the Complete Health Improvement Program. Those people who come to us with the highest cholesterol levels, they have drops of 25, 30, 35% within 4 weeks. So the dietary approach works very, very well. And what the Pritikin people found in this center was that people that came to them because of heart disease, they also found that the diabetes improved. They could be off medication many times. They found that their blood pressure levels came down. They found that they were eating more food than ever before, and yet they lost weight because the food they were eating were foods that were basically low-fat foods. And as you know, fat is the most concentrated source of energy in the diet. So when you cut back on oils, fats, and grease, you immediately lower your calorie intake, and so weight loss is being facilitated, and with that, blood pressures come down, diabetes comes down, heart disease, all these kind of things begin to happen. In the meantime, a young cardiologist at Harvard began to think of what could be done to build on the encouraging outcomes in the Predican Longevity Center program, right? And so what he did, he took 48 heart disease patients and he placed half of them on the common American Heart Association diet. It's not quite as strict and rigid as the one that he put the other half on. And these were not people that he placed on a diet that had only less than 10% of the calories in fat. Now, just to explain that, an Australian diet, an American diet is about 35% fat. Now, this is less than 10%, so it's a very strict diet. Also, he didn't allow them any cholesterol to speak of. So that means it was basically a plant-based diet, lots of fiber. And then he followed them up for 1 year, and he noticed that on his program, 25% drop in cholesterol, but moreover, he found out that the American Heart Association diet only lowered the cholesterol by 5%. And when he looked at, with very sophisticated technology, space-age technology, when he looked at the coronary arteries, he began to realize that 82% of the plaques, those pimples on the inside of the artery wall, that 82% had begun to melt down. The disease reversal was taking place. A melting down was beginning. While on the control group, the American Heart Association, he found that 53% of the plaques had progressed. To reverse the disease, we got to go further. You have to go further towards a diet that is very lean and is basically free of cholesterol. And you know, the results speak for themselves.
So this is now a major breakthrough. It demonstrated not just in monkeys, but also in humans now.
It was shaking up everything, you know, because we thought that bypass surgery was the answer, placing stents was the answer, and now something as simple as a dietary change can produce these changes. It was big news. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, the reports came out from the Cleveland Clinic, a famous heart center in America, and there Dr. Esselstyn demonstrated that he was able to take patients that were the walking dead, as he called them. They already had bypass and everything else, and nothing could be done for them anymore. And he placed them on a very simple diet, similar to what Ornish had done, basically a vegetarian diet, foods as grown, high in fiber, you know, lots of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. And he brought their cholesterol levels down to less than 4.0, and over the next 5 years, the results were there. He followed them up for another 7 years. Now it's 12 years of results. Great, great success. And now he wrote a book chronicling 20 years of these patients, of whom many had been given 5-6 months to live. And all of them but 4 are alive and doing well. And when you make some of these simple lifestyle changes, as we do in the CHIP program, here's what can happen to people. And here's now something that I want to show you that we picked up the other day from Mark McNeil, a graduate of our CHIP, the Complete Health Improvement Program. Take a look. He's following a very simple diet. Let's take a look.
I thought life was just great. I felt well, and then bang, I got told you've got 6 arteries that are blocked and 99% blocked. And so that was a bit of a surprise. I had to have 5 bypasses after that, after getting over the operation and what had to happen there. I went back onto my normal diet, which I thought was great. I had a good diet, I thought. Went back and had blood tests, and I was surprised. My cholesterol was raised, blood pressure was up, and at that point I was introduced to the CHIP program. I went onto it immediately, straight away. I thought, I have to do this. Within 2 months of going on the CHIP program, all halved. My cholesterol was halved, blood pressure was down. In fact, I had to lower my blood pressure pills because I was getting dizzy. So hey, that was great. And then that's allowed me now to get back into the things I love. 2 weeks ago, I got back on the bike, and one thing I really noticed When I used to bike before, I was always out of breath. I went out 2 weeks ago, I hit the hills, I didn't even get a sweat. I was doing some marvellous riding, you know, getting back on the bike, biking with my friends, living life to the full. And to me, that my life is just beginning again.
You know, when I see that, that's payday for me. I mean, it makes me feel so good that we can do something about a disease that is so devastating.
So a simple, natural diet is really a blessing.
The evidence is piling up strong and strong every day. We are what we eat. And the former Surgeon General, Dr. Koop, said it very, very well. He said, no prescription is more valuable than knowledge when it comes to health and disease. People, you are what you eat. Make better choices, because you can prevent this disease and you probably can also reverse this disease.
Dr. Hans, this is information we need. Thank you for joining us, and we wish you a safe and happy stay here in Australia.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
What if you could add 10 good, healthy years to your life? Would you be interested? A long, healthy life is no accident. Genetics play a role, but it also depends on good health habits. Experts tell us that if you adopt some simple lifestyle principles, you may live up to a decade longer. If you would like insights into how to live a healthier life, then I'd like to recommend the free gift we have for all our viewers today. It's the Bible study guide, The Secret of a Healthy Lifestyle. This study guide is our gift to you and is absolutely free. There are no costs or obligations whatsoever. So don't miss this wonderful opportunity to receive the gift we have for you today. Here's the information you need.
Phone or text us at 0436 333 555 or visit our website www.tij.tv to request today's free offer, and we'll send it to you totally free of charge and with no obligation. So don't delay. Call or text 0436 333 555 in Australia or 020 422 2042 in New Zealand, or visit our website www.tij.tv to request today's offer. Write to us at GPO Box 274, Sydney, New South Wales 2001, Australia, or PO Box 76673, Manukau, Auckland 2241, New Zealand. Don't delay. Call or text us now.
If you've enjoyed today's journey, be sure to join us again next week when we will share another of life's journeys together and experience another new and thought-provoking perspective on the peace, insight, understanding and hope that only the Bible can give us. The incredible journey truly is television that changes lives. Until next week, remember the ultimate destination of life's journey. Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Our story begins with the destruction of the sacred city of Jerusalem during a series of fierce battles that started in 605 BC, just over 2,600 years ago. The greatest empire of the ancient world, Babylon, attacked and plundered the nation of Judah, taking many of the people captive. Among the captives were 4 gifted young Jewish men. They were brought into the luxurious palace of King Nebuchadnezzar, where they were to serve at the king's whim. The whole idea was to reprogram these young men and give them a totally new worldview, one based on the values and principles of Babylon. Before long, the young captives faced a test, and it arose over the issue of food. You see, although they were captives, they were being treated like royalty. They could even eat the king's special food and sit at his table. But to do so meant to be disobedient to the God of heaven. God had given instruction regarding what food was best for people to eat. These young men had been taught about the importance of eating the right food that was best for them and avoiding food that was harmful to their health. But now they faced a real dilemma. To fail to eat at the king's table meant to be disobedient to the king of Babylon, who was treating them so favorably. They had to make a difficult decision. Who would they obey, God or the king? Well, Daniel and his friends didn't hesitate in making a decision, an important decision. We read about it in Daniel chapter 1 and verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. There was no question in Daniel's mind. Loyalty to God was more important than loyalty to the king. He resolved that he would be faithful to the Lord of heaven and earth. He would honor his God in all of the details of life, even in what he ate and drank. So begins the book of Daniel, which right away sets a theme that will be found throughout the entire book: obedience to God versus obedience to man. And it presents us with a challenge. Do we do what is right and what we believe is right? Or do we go with the majority to be popular, to be liked, and maybe even to advance our careers? Like Daniel, God's people in the end time will not hesitate to choose obedience to God over obedience to man. It's important to note the implications that these tests have for the rest of the book of Daniel. The tests described in chapter 1 seem very mild in comparison to the much greater tests to come later in the book. But the lesson of chapter 1 is that only those who pass the minor tests will ever pass the major tests. You see, if we cannot remain loyal to God when the test is easy, we will not be loyal when the test is difficult. Today, we live in a time of prosperity when it's relatively easy to serve God. If we cannot be obedient in this time, we will never be obedient when real trouble comes. How important then that we be faithful to God at all times. Yes, Daniel was written millennia ago in an entirely different world, but the principles shared remain fully relevant even today.